F.W. Murnau is most well known for directing the vampire film Nosferatu. Made in 1922, the movie was inspired by Bram Stoker's Dracula. However, he wasn't just a one-hit wonder, having directed numerous movies during his career in Germany and the US. Films that set new standards in cinema of the era before his untimely death in 1931. Born Friedrich Wilhelm Plumpe in Germany on December 28, 1889, as one of 5 children into a financially well-off family. His father, Heinrich Plumpe, owned a textile factory in Germany, which he eventually sold to invest in other businesses, many of which failed. This forced a downgrade in social class for the family. However, by all accounts, F.W. Murnau lived a reasonably well-off and happy childhood. As a child, Frederick's father was supportive of his children's creative endeavors, building the children a theater for them to put on productions. However, when his father sent Frederick to university in Berlin, he was expected to study for a professorship. Not wanting to give up on performing, Frederick continued to perform under the assumed name F.W. Murnau, in the hopes his father would not find out. Unsurprisingly, his father did learn of his continued studies in the performing arts. Once his father discovered that he was still doing theater, he was cut off financially and had to rely on his grandparents to send him money. Murnau transferred to school in Heidelberg, where he continued his studies in literature and philosophy. This is also where he met director Max Reinhardt. Reinhardt was so impressed with Murnau's acting talent that he offered him a scholarship to his theater school. During this time, he acted and assisted Reinhardt's theatrical productions. It was through working with Max Reinhardt that he realized he preferred directing over acting. Then when World War I broke out in Europe, Frederick went into the military as a foot soldier. He did well and was promoted to a company commander. As the war continued, he applied and was accepted to become a pilot. During his time flying for the military, he crashed a total of 8 times, each without any serious injury. However, after his 8th crash, he was captured and became a prisoner of war. While as a prisoner, he was allowed to produce theatrical productions within the prisoner camp with his fellow internees. And during this time in prison, he wrote his first script. After the war, Murnau switched his focus into film from theater, and in 1919 founded a film company. He began by directing a few short films before moving into features. His first feature was The Boy in Blue, and in 1920, Murnau directed Bela Lugosi in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Unfortunately, no copies of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde remain to this day. It was after Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde that he directed the film he is now most famous for, Nosferatu, in 1922. Nosferatu was based on the Bram Stoker book Dracula, and was one of the earlier films to feature a vampire, now a staple of blood-sucking horror cinema. Murnau tried to get the rights to Bram Stoker's book, but was denied by Stoker's family. Still, intending to make the film, Murnau changed numerous aspects of the story, such as names and locations, in order to get around the copyright that was still valid at the time. Florence Stoker, Bram's widow, sued Murnau for copyright violation. Florence won the court case, which included the verdict that all copies of the film had to be destroyed. Luckily, Nosferatu avoided the tragedy that has happened to many of Murnau's other films, and not all copies were destroyed, allowing us to watch the film today. At the time, Nosferatu was not the film he was famous for. It was other films he made after it, such as The Last Laugh, also called The Last Man. This tells the story of a man working in a hotel who is aging out of his job. What made this film famous was that there was almost no dialogue. Still made in the silent era, there were often title cards flashing on the screen to reflect spoken word. However, in this film only one title card appears. The rest of the story is told through pantomime and unique camera movement thanks to cinematographer Karl Freund. He would do things like attach the camera to his waist and used roller skates to move through a scene. He also did shots from a bicycle. Nowadays, this is common thanks to Steadicams, dollies, and drones, but at the time, most films were shot on a soundstage with the camera on a tripod rarely moving. In 1926, Murnau made an adaptation of the book Faust, which turned out to be his last German production. This led to a contract with Fox in the United States. Murnau took the contract with an unusual request that he be allowed to take his crew with him, and Fox agreed. His first film for Fox was Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans in 1927, which received 4 Academy Award nominations in 1929. Of the 3 awards the film won, one was in cinematography for Charles Rocher and Karl Strauss. Financially, however, the film was a failure. Due to the financial failure of Sunrise, Fox took more control over his next film, Four Devils and City Girl. Delusioned by working with the studio, Murnau left the company and formed a partnership with Robert Flaherty in 1929 to regain control of his projects. The first collaboration between the two was Taboo in 1931, which was filmed in Bora Bora and Tahiti. The two filmmakers had numerous disputes during the production and quickly ended their partnership. The movie was censored in the United States for its images of bare-breasted Polynesian women. Murnau fell in love with Tahiti, however.
Honestly, Tahiti's too good to be true.
I know. It's a magical place.
He planned to set up a studio and make more movies in Tahiti before his tragic death ended those plans. It was during post-production for Taboo that Murnau was in California to work on the music for the film, after which he was going to visit his mother in Germany. On March 11, 1931, he was being driven on the Pacific Coast Highway to a meeting in a hired car. It is unclear as to what was happening in the car at the time. Some believe acts of the sexual nature were going on with one of the other 2 men in the vehicle. The car skidded off the road and down an embankment, then rolled. Murnau fractured his skull and died the next day. The other 2 survived the crash. His funeral at the time was attended by only 11 people. Interestingly, a fortune teller told him he would die in a car on this trip, which is why he was taking a short drive to the meeting. Then he was going to have his car shipped in advance. He was planning to take a ship around through the Panama Canal to New York rather than drive across country in the car. His body was sent to Germany, where it was buried in Stansdorf, outside of Berlin, where another service was held. Fritz Lang gave the eulogy at that ceremony. One more interesting tidbit. In July of 2015, his grave was broken into and the skull was taken. The person who stole it has yet to be identified.